He had phoned. He had called her by a nickname. She quickly recognized the voice and that it was him. Then they lost contact. He contacted her again, and they kept him on the phone and asked him to call 911 to get him help as soon as possible.
Where was he at that point?
I know it's somewhere near Sacramento, California.
Well, an entire community, along with the authorities of a number of different local, state, and federal agencies, are scratching their heads this morning trying to figure out how a guy who was skiing down a mountain in New York disappeared, leading to a nationwide search, coming up with nothing until he was later found stumbling down a street nearly 2,900 miles away in Sacramento, California. Hey, what's up guys? Tyler here with Secure Team. Well, this is one of those stories that leaves you with more questions than answers, and it's reminiscent of some other stories in the past that have occurred that are very similar to this. And right now, this is just breaking. We don't have a lot of details. The local authorities are not giving much details out as to how a man who is skiing as a part of a group in New York on something called Whiteface Mountain, which is the 5th highest mountain in the U.S. state of New York. So they're in New York. They're skiing as a part of a group of firefighters. So this guy who goes by the name of Danny Philippidis, who is 49, from Toronto, Canada, a married father of 2, and was a 28-year veteran Toronto firefighter, was skiing when he suddenly disappeared off the mountain. And well, I'll go ahead and read you this report here, published by NBC5, which goes on to say, quote, "A skier missing from Whiteface Mountain has been found in California. New York State Police said Konstantinos Danny Philippidis, 49 of Toronto, was found 2,900 miles away Tuesday in Sacramento. Philippidis was reported missing last Wednesday by friends who said he could not be found as the resort was closing. His belongings were found at the lodge, and his car was still in the parking lot. Since then, hundreds of volunteers have spent 7,000 hours combing the mountain. Crews used canines and helicopters as part of the search. The steep and icy terrain made the search even more challenging. But that was when suddenly Philippidis made contact with law enforcement officers in Sacramento, California. He was reported to be in good health, but the circumstances of his disappearance remain under investigation. Officials have not said why he went missing. Before Tuesday, police said they had no reason to believe that the man was not still on the mountain. The Department of Homeland Security, New York State Police, the New York Department of Conservation, United States Customs and Border Protection, and officials in Toronto assisted in the search. And so again, he had been skiing with a group of firefighters and retired firefighters. They had all gone together. They went to leave. The man was missing. They could not find him anywhere. And that's when he was discovered nearly 3,000 miles away. He was found confused and unable to answer questions as to how he got to California. They said that the man received medical care after calling his wife and then 911. The man was found alone when he eventually did make the call to his wife. So apparently he appeared in California. They were searching for him for days. On this mountain in New York, they had no other reason to think he would go anywhere else, let alone how he would get to California without his car, wearing the same outfit that he was wearing, but we'll get to that here in a minute. And so the article continues. He was found alone. He also does not have any history of mental illness or substance abuse. They said that the man was found wearing the same ski gear, including the helmet and goggles that he was last seen wearing when he was reported missing in New York. Officials have not said how he traveled to Sacramento. They said that they do not believe that he flew there because he left his identification on Whiteface Mountain. And so all of this information was also communicated in a press conference, which you've been seeing here, and I'll post the Facebook link to this down below. But basically, you're going to be told the same thing I'm telling you here, which is that they're not really giving out any details. They're still trying to figure it out. But the big lingering question I'm sure you guys are asking yourselves is, how does a regular by any standards, just an ordinary married father, a firefighter, on top of a mountain in New York, skiing with a group of friends, suddenly vanish off the face of the planet, it would seem, only to appear 3,000 miles away, stumbling, confused, wearing the exact same ski gear, goggles and hat, winter clothes, no idea how he got there. I mean, does this sound familiar to you guys? You know, this immediately reminded me of one of the most infamous alien abduction cases many of you have probably heard of, and that was the case of the Travis Walton UFO incident. Now, if you study this topic, particularly that of aliens or UFOs or abductions, likely you'll have heard of Travis Walton. But if you don't, just a quick recap here. Travis Walton was an American logger, okay? He worked in the woods on a logging team, and back on November 5th, 1975, he was out working with a logging crew in a national forest in Arizona, when suddenly he disappeared. Again, from what felt like the face of the earth. They could not find this guy. It wasn't until 5 days later, after a massive search which turned up nothing, that they found Mr. Walton stumbling up to a payphone, confused, didn't know what had happened, and after some time it was revealed that the few memories he did have were that he and 6 of his coworkers who were riding in a truck encountered a saucer-shaped object hovering above the ground, making a high-pitched noise. Walton claimed that he left the truck and approached the object when a beam of light suddenly appeared from the craft, knocking him to the ground. The other 6 men were frightened, hightailing it out of the area, making their escape. And all of these men, starting with Travis, along with his 6 co-workers, all share the same story, that they saw this object, they tried to get away, Walton was left behind, and that is when he disappeared, only to appear 5 days later, detailing memories of waking up on what appeared to him to be a hospital-like room, being observed by short, bald creatures, what would later become known as the typical alien greys, who had allegedly taken him aboard their ship. To do what with, we don't know. According to Walton, that is when he blacked out and claimed that he remembered nothing else until he was found stumbling, walking along the highway, trying to figure out what had happened. Now, of course, I'm not saying that that is what happened in this instance. It's just what brought that to mind. Now, it also brings to mind some other stories that, if you remember, we spoke about when we interviewed Mr. David Paulides, who is the author of the Missing 411 series. And if you don't know about these books, you guys need to read them. And what the Missing 411 is basically a series of books that have cataloged thousands of these cases where people have mysteriously gone missing around or within national forests. And in many of those cases, and we're talking from grown adults down to children, have disappeared in certain areas, where in which, like in this case, there would be a massive search, no one would be found, and it wouldn't be until later on where these people would reappear hundreds or sometimes thousands of miles away with no recollection of how they got there. And in many of the cases where it was children or senior citizens, you have the physical aspect that right off the bat would keep them from even being able to traverse these massive distances on their own. And so I did an interview with Mr. Paulides when he came out with his documentary called The Missing 411, and you guys can check out that video on the channel. But again, I'm just detailing you some of the strange things that happen that are similar to what has happened here. Now, we don't have any more information as of yet, but I am really interested as to what happened here and what the authorities are going to tell us. How did this man disappear from a mountain and make it 3,000 miles away? As you heard earlier, he didn't have his car. He left his car. He didn't have identification or his wallet, so he couldn't have driven himself to an airport. He didn't have any money or his identification, so even if he could have made it to an airport, he wouldn't have had money or ID to purchase said ticket. He was also found confused, wearing the exact same ski clothes that he was wearing on the mountain. And so you don't have to be a UFO researcher or a conspiracy theorist to say something is not right here. And so, yeah, I will put the link to this down below the story. He was found 6 days later from upstate New York, And you guys stay tuned. What more can I say? So put your theories down below. I'm anxious to hear what you guys have to say. Be sure to stay tuned, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you know when we post a new video. Follow me on social media and Twitter, and I will see you guys back here in just a bit.